Hi there, folks. My name's Novawing24, and welcome to another episode of the Three Grumpy Simmers. And of course, I am joined by my two other grumpy colleagues. I am joined, of course, by Sergio,
Hey guys.
and of course, the most famous man with the purple hat, Bel Geode.
Good morning.
And it is a very good morning for Bel Geode over there. It's a stupid o'clock in the morning there. Um, It's
Yeah.
we are actually not technically challenged simmers for once. We can actually focus on being grumpy this week, this month, which is kind of cool. So we're gonna jump straight into it. Actually, we're gonna jump straight into it because we want to cover off, which is it's almost an extension of what we were talking about in our last episode. We're gonna talk about this
Mhm.
time. We're gonna talk about various forms of downloadable content. There's been a few interesting things. There's been and we're going to talk about it specifically later on as well. There's a bit of a meme kicking around some of the Facebook groups at the moment, but we're going to talk about there's been some interesting reactions to some downloadable content that's been made available for various simulators over the last sort of few months. We want to and I want to take this time to dissect some of those reactions and dissect some of the feedback that sort of both more vocal members of the community have sort of made, and perhaps people that may not understand why some content is out. So we're gonna get started with one particular piece of DLC that caused a very negative reaction in the community, and I was actually really surprised by this actually because normally the DCS community is fairly accepting of pretty much anything that gets thrown at it. But in this particular instance, they really didn't. And of course, we're talking about the GPS DLC for the MI8 HIP.
Mhm. Oh,
Um,
hi, Luna.
so,
We have a guest.
we have a guest.
Grumpy Cat. This is
Oh
Luna.
yeah.
Hi,
Say hi,
Luna.
Luna. Hi, Luna.
Hey Luna.
Hi, Luna. So of course, Luna's obviously come to express her opinion on this GPS add-on. Now,
Yeah.
the
She uses
reason.
all the time.
The,
Yeah.
She
uh,
uses it all the time, man.
That's how
oh,
she gets to the kitchen. She's got it programmed in there. She's got like the ILS approach into the litter box. It's pretty cool. You should see it sometime. She does a cat carrier trap.
So it's like
is,
the
is it
instrument.
is it a Cat 3 LILS approach or a Cat 1?
It's a Cat 3 ILS.
So it's ILS like an instrument leader box system, right?
Okay.
That
Wow.
is exactly what it
So,
is.
there's the old saying, never work with children or animals. Anyway, okay, so yes, the GPS add-on for DCS. Now, I quite frankly, I don't have the hip. I don't particularly wouldn't, and even if I had it, I wouldn't particularly purchase this one. However, I respect the fact that a developer has spent a lot of time detailing a piece of kit in a which is an optional, like a non-standard piece of like installed into the actual real helicopter. So it's sort of also makes sense as an optional extra for purchase. And I respect the fact that developers spend a lot of time programming it and things like that. But is it something that I would get? No. But at the same time, I respect people, and for me, it sort of falls in the same category as the Flight One GNS 430/530 series. They are great, beautiful pieces of an add-on content for the prepared and FSX platforms. Would I get them? No, because they don't interest me. But I respect the fact that they are there. So, Sergio, I know you've had a muck around with this GPS unit. Belgium, I'm not sure if you have, but it's like, why did we have this reaction of the community? Like, I don't I'm struggling to figure it out myself, considering that, as I said before, the DCS community seems to have lapped up a $90 $80 add-ons with no second guesses before.
I think part of the major problem that the community's having, everybody's still waiting for the other stuff that Eagle Dynamics is trying to finish up, or the third parties. The F-14 Tomcat, the F-18 Hornet, the Harrier. We're still waiting for these three items. And granted, the Harrier at least is in internal testing, so it actually might be 2 more weeks at this point. But in the interim, they're throwing things at us to kind of placate us. So, we have the GPS, which granted, it's a GNS 430. It's the same thing that's in X-Plane. And even in Flight Sim World, some of the planes have that in there. So it's not something that the greater community is not used to. I do have the MI8 hip. Do I think I need it? No, not really, because whenever I make my missions and, do stuff in there, I kind of like the old school Russian navigation. I don't need this newfangled doohickey in there. But I'm kind of curious to get it only from one standpoint to see how they implemented it, if it's as good as X-Plane or Flight Sim World or any of the other platforms.
Yeah, well, I was very surprised about the reaction that the community had, on this particular add-on, and it's not something that actually takes away from the sim if you don't have it, right? It's not like you cannot do any of the missions or any other flights or
exactly.
enjoy it.
Yeah, it's not required.
Yeah, it's not something that you require to be able to enjoy the helicopter. Is it something nice to have? Yeah, it is. Would I pay for the GPS? Probably not. I know I'm kind of like Bel on this, and I rather use whatever the helicopter comes with by default than use the GPS. But I can see a lot of people using it, for fun or for training or just because they want a GPS in a helicopter for some reason, because there are some guys that just want a GPS in the helicopter. I've been able to try it. I don't have a lot of experience with it yet. I have had access to it. I've installed it. I just done a couple of flights and then do some basic stuff. It seems to me that it is way more complete than the default GPS on X-Plane or FSX.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it has a lot more features. One of the things that you are able to do, I haven't tried it yet, but I've seen it, is the ability for you to enter coordinates. GPS coordinates instead of just entering points and airfields and whatnot. So that alone, it's a huge difference. But the thing
which I don't think is even modeled in the Flight 1 version of it.
I have no idea.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, I have no idea, to be honest. But the thing is, do I need it? Is it something that it's going to drastically improve my DCS gaming, my DCS flying, and MI8 flying? No, not really. Not really. It's not. It's not anything that's going to drastically improve or enhance or whatever my usage of the hip. So like I told you, I was really surprised because it's not something that it's going to take away from the sim at all.
Yeah.
So,
And it's and that's the thing that I'm trying to figure out is I'm trying to understand, why is it, particularly when why is it the community has such a negative reaction to it? Like Bel, on one hand I kind of get the thing where there is the stack of products that everybody's been waiting 2 more weeks for DCS is getting quite long now. And to have this sort of literally pop out of nowhere was a bit of a wait, what the?
Right. Exactly.
I get that, but I guess the flip side of that is the fact that, given the fact that Eagle Dynamics themselves aren't developing 99% of the modules, they're kind of out of the loop of this one almost. So I kind of can't, I get a perception of that, but I don't think it's the case kind of thing. But yeah, as I said, I'm still surprised given the fact that the DCS as a platform is one of the most flexible in terms of you only buy what you want. Or what you want to sim with. So that's why I was a bit surprised with the reaction like that. Are we seeing a backlash to to a community that's starting to feel that I don't know, is the community starting to feel jaded, thinking that they're getting less and less as part of their core experience and having to spend more and more money to be able to get a complete sim experience, or are we just simply seeing people who are just tired of waiting 2 more weeks?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the latter. People are really starting to get tired of the 2 more weeks. And as we talked about in the previous show, some developers are a bit more forthcoming with the weekly information that they have for us. And while that's awesome, it's still kind of like it's so close and yet so far, you know? And then to have something like this come out, which granted, yeah, it's not essential for
Mm.
the sim, don't have to buy it, but it, in my opinion, it would appeal to a very small subset of the group. It's not something more global, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah.
Now, I did hear that this thing is supposed to be able to work with the L39. So if they incorporate that down the road where, it can be placed in more planes and you just simply get the one module and use it for whichever plane you want, that I can kind of see. Because, I mean, my very first FSX series was me taking an L39 all across the USA.
Mm.
And it had a GPS built in there, and it was, something similar to this. So I
And
could kind of see
I admit I would actually I probably would buy it if I could put it in the L39. I absolutely love the L39. I really do. So yeah, okay, yeah, but I guess does it still come down to, is it a community thing where they just are just craving more information about the content that they're looking at buying and being fed?
I don't. Before we started recording this show, I don't remember if it was do you, Drew or Tristan that said that. Where does it stop? Right? Where do we draw the
yeah,
line? And yeah,
how much
and
is enough, right?
yeah, and I think the DCS community is trying to tell the developers where they are drawing the line. They
Mhm.
are. I don't think a lot of people that are complaining about the GPS are actually complaining about the GPS. This particular model in the way that is presented and sold. I think that what they are trying to do and trying to say is don't try to screw us over, and don't try to start
Mm.
selling us. I've seen another image, of the F-18 where a guy said, there was this new DCS where they were selling the landing gear, and there was a photo of the landing gear at the flaps,
Yeah, I saw that
and
one.
they were, yeah,
I
it was
saw
doing
that one.
like, the landing gear module, and then in small print, flaps
Uh,
not, yeah, flaps not
that's not
available.
included.
Yeah,
Mm.
flaps not included. Yeah, that's
Yep.
the thing. Yeah. So yeah, I think that what the community is trying to do right now is raising a red flag to the developers and tell them that they should not go through this path of like that image that you talked about, Tristan. Sell us the bread for the burger, and then we
Mm.
have to buy the burger, and then we have I think
I
I
think
think that's
I actually and in a way and thinking of it in that regard, I think is possibly the best way, and I think it's actually in a way, again, relating back to our last episode where we talked about community engagement and the way community and developers interact. I think it is a good way that they have sort of put the red flag up and said, you know what, we are willing to pay a lot of money for very high quality content, but we want complete content. We
yeah.
don't
I
want
think I think
we
that's
don't
the
want
thing.
something, yeah, we don't want something where the landing gear is a an optional
Right.
is a required DLC as well. Which I think is a very fair way of looking at it. I think that and I think perhaps thinking about it more, that maybe you're right, that the community is not rebelling so much against the fact that it's a GPS unit, because as we know from X-Plane, from the ESP platforms, FSX and Prepared, we're used to paying for something extra like that. What they're saying is that, you know what, we want a complete content. We are willing to pay a premium price, because let's face it, with the exception of PMDG, DCS modules are the highest priced individual aircraft in the market. But people are want a premium product with their premium price tag.
Yeah, the thing is, don't forget that we were talking about the Reality XP GPS, the 430 and the 530.
Right.
Yeah, but the thing is that both X-Plane and FSX come with a default GPS, with a simpler version of the GPS. But the fact is that it comes with a GPS, And all of a sudden, the community started to look at this as a way for developers to start milking more money out of the community by, um,
Selling them something that should
propo-
have been in there already.
In the
yeah,
first
but by
place. Yeah.
by doing this on purpose, by actually, they could release the aircraft with a GPS or a landing gear or flaps or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yep.
Talking about landing gear and the flaps is obviously far-fetched, but the thing is, you know, they could start thinking about, okay, we could release the aircraft with all this weaponry, for example, but no, let's just let's take the F-14 for example. Drew, imagine that they were going to release the F-14, but the AIM 154, the Phoenix, would not be
Mm.
available on this version, and you
Oh,
would
there'd
have
be a
to play.
riot. There would be
Yeah,
a riot.
yeah, but you
I'm,
would have to play
I'm,
like.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Not
I agree with
releasing it.
Peter.
Releasing it without the weapon it was built around. Yeah, no, that would
Yeah,
Yeah,
not
well,
fly for
yeah, it
anyone.
may be a bad example. Yeah, it would be like saying
Mm.
that we're going to release the A10 without a cannon. Okay,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
bad example, but like for example, okay, we don't have the means to release it with a I don't know the AIM 120, whatever. These are stupid examples, but they
But I get your
illustrate
point.
the
But
point. Yeah, like.
it highlights the point though, and it highlights the point that
Yeah,
it's
it's
like,
like, okay, let's release an alpha host version of the aircraft, and
mm,
then sell all these little things to the
Mm.
community because they're going to buy it. And I think that's what the community it's telling them. Just don't do this. Don't be don't be morons. Don't be stupid. Don't ruin the community by finding this niche, this market, this different market in which you can make more money out of the community just because you're going to purposely release aircraft that aren't on his
I'm fully
full
finished. Yeah.
their full.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think that's the thing.
So,
And honestly, with DCS2, instead of paying for modules that are basically quality of life enhancements, I would much rather spend money, airplanes aside, on new maps. Like
Yeah.
if someone were making a Vietnam era map or something like that, or maybe something in Central America where I can take my little Nicaraguan hip or something like that and fly around the area, that I would pay for. I would pay for extra terrain. I'm not going to pay for a GPS,
mm.
especially one that I've got in all the other sims that I fly.
And I suppose, and now thinking about that, like moving on, and it's interesting. Because DCS is a let's be honest, with the exception of Flight Sim World, it's still a fairly young sim. It's yes, I know it's got its heritage going back to the lock-on
Yeah, it's
days
got a lot
and all
of
the rest of it.
heritage. Mm.
But as a sort of a generational sim, it's actually still fairly young. And it still has well, all the sims we have are still have an active development community. I mean, hell, even FS9 still has an active development community, which is scary. Um,
Yeah.
But it actually raises a point that, and Sergio, sort of picking up on what you said before with the fact that you're saying that this is the community's way of with a red flag up saying this is the line in the sand. We will pay a top dollar, but we will only pay for certain things. This is going almost a step too far. And I sort of look at because I'm very fortunate in the fact that slash my wallet gets hurt a lot with spending a lot of money on add-ons to review to the community, which I'm happy to do because I believe in giving back. But the quality of some of the add-ons out there really disturbs me, and the fact that people are charging money for stuff, and don't get me wrong, I respect the fact that when developers do work, they need to get paid, and absolutely I support that 100%. But there's a flip side as well, is that if you're paying a price tag, you expect a level of quality to go with it. And there's been times when, and I will just flat out call them out, Perfect Flight. I'm sorry. Like, how in holy hell are they still in business? Like, legit question. How are they still in business? I don't understand. Like, they've been around since, early FS9 days. And they're producing the same crap. Like, horrifically bad shit product. And charging the same price that Aerosoft is charging for some of their products. I'm like, what the hell? I don't understand. I don't get it.
I don't get it. I don't get it. Mm-mm.
But you know, and
It's numbers. I think it's all about numbers. You know, they have a lot of people buying their products, and they probably don't need that much amount of money to keep their business running. I think that's pretty
Yeah,
much it.
I call that the P.T. Barnum effect. The late, great P.T. Barnum said probably the most important phrase for our times, and that is, a sucker is born every minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, but is that sort of a case where DCS and maybe Flight Sim World potentially has a leg up, as it were, on legacy platforms like FSX and Prepared. And yes, I know I can feel the hate already flowing in the comments by me calling Prepared a legacy platform. But is that where the Flight Sim World and DCS have a leg up on the legacy platforms because they have a community that's still new and is still able to put up red flags like this? Because let's face it, the companies like Perfect Flight and Virtual Coal, because let's be honest, they fall kind of in the same category as well. When they're trying to compete against, you're trying to put their products side by side with the likes of A2A and PMDG. It's kind of like, you sort of see why the money's going to the other guys as for their products. But is that where the communities of Flight Sim World and A2A, Flight Sim World and DCS have an advantage because they are still, in this early sort of stage of their life cycle where a community can actually make a stand like this?
Yeah, I could see that, but I mean, at least in the case of Flight Sim World, because let's not forget, Flight Sim World just had their very first paid DLC add-on, and that being the PA-28, a Piper. That add-on was made by Just Flights.
I'm actually going to argue the point on that. It's not the first add-on for Flight Sim World. It's the first official add-on. It's the first official add-on. But the first add-on was actually SPAD Next.
Oh, really?
So for viewers who may not know what SPAD Next is essentially FSUIPC on steroids. It's everything you wish FSUIPC was and more. I highly recommend that you have a look at the website. It's a product that's still in development, but yeah, I highly recommend you have a look at it. But yeah, the first product that officially fully supported Flight Sim World was SPAD Next, followed by FS Flight Control and the mob that make terrain mesh. It's really bad. I've got it installed. It's awesome. Pilots. Their ultimate terrain mesh supports Flight Sim World out of the box.
I've heard of that one.
Sorry, I digress. But yeah, it's just interesting. No. Yeah, but that was what I found interesting was the fact that we've got these people that are willing to sort of bet on the future of a sim and actually go out on a limb for a product that literally we don't know if it'll ever leave early access. Anyway, sorry, I digress. Back to you, Bel.
No, that was basically the point I was trying to make. I mean, DCS getting a lot of shade with something like the GPS is probably paler in comparison to the amount of shade that Dovetail got when the Arrow got released. And let's not forget, Dovetail didn't set the price on that one. That price was actually set by the developer who brought it to Flight Sim World. And this developer is also bringing this aircraft to X-Plane 11. They just announced that not too long ago. I want to say yesterday, actually. So, here we have a different product that is, a full, complete item that's going to be available for multiple sims. But in one particular avenue that they're utilizing to sell this product, people are still going up in arms. And from what I'm hearing, I haven't had a chance to fly it yet. I haven't had a chance to fly it. From what I'm hearing, it's really freaking good. It's worth the money that you would pay for it.
And the fact also as well is that they released it because there was all that rubbish in the community about people are only going to be able to sell through Steam. It actually went live on the Just Flight website before it went live on Steam. So you don't have to purchase it through Steam if you don't want to. So
Yeah,
Right.
but that's something that DevTel Games always told us from the start. That was a concern from the community, and I
Yeah,
think we
they've
have
been saying it.
addressed it on the first episode or something.
Hmm.
mm, mm,
Um, and it was no surprise for at least for me, and I know it was not a surprise for you guys either, because it was a known fact.
Right.
Developers can release add-ons either on Steam or their own platform, so
mm.
no big surprise here. And I'm glad that's the way DevTel Games decided to go, because otherwise I think that they would lose a lot of developers
Mm.
and
And
and a lot of credit with the community.
And I think it now falls over to again what we, and this sort of ties it up rather nice and neatly, actually, in a nice neat little bow with our episode from our last episode, where positive community engagement is actually beneficial. So I think that maybe some of the vitriol was a bit harsh in the DCS
Yeah.
community, but
Hmm.
it's got its point across. They've got their point across, but and I think I haven't seen as much hate as I was expecting with the release of Just Flight's first add-on for Flight Sim World. And again, it's a developer's prerogative, and that's great to sort of have that experience and that multiple sort of platforms being used. So,
Yeah, they're
And when
doing the
you
right thing. They're doing the right thing
Yeah,
when it comes
yeah,
to that. And it's interesting. I'm actually looking at the Steam page for the Piper right now.
Hmm.
Overwhelmingly, it's got positive feedback. For as much hate as it took, like the first week or two that it came out, it's doing really well.
mm, mm. And I think that's an interesting gauge. As much as I don't like some of those rating systems, I actually appreciate the fact that the vast, when you can actually see, positive and negative feedback, and you can see that over time it's building up a more positive image as people actually, you know, take the time with it, and not like other platforms where they've just sort of written it off without ever trying it. So yeah, no, it's good to see, and as I said, it's good to see a positive result of community engagement, and as I said, I hope that that with these two new platforms, these two sort of very lively platforms of DCS and of Flight Sim World, that we see that continue that positive community engagement. Of course. It also brings a final sort of interesting little sort of DLC question, which is when do developers decide what platforms to work with and what ones to cut off? Now, we've got two very interesting
Mhm.
events have happened in the sort of the week leading up to this episode, where on the one hand we have one developer which has taken a product, and they've developed it for one set of platforms. So they developed for FSX and for Prepared. They've now brought that to Flight Sim World, and they have now announced that they are bringing it to X-Plane. So Just Flight with the Warrior. So this, they're now diversifying.
Mhm.
And then conversely, on the other hand, we have other developers, both scenery developers, but more of more imminent existence. So we saw the release of the Milviz, the long-awaited Milviz Corsair,
Mhm.
and that one has been released exclusively to Prepared. So they have cut off a fairly large part of their user base with one fell swoop, which, I'll be honest, when I read that, I actually thought it was a typo. Like, not going to lie. I actually thought that was a
Mhm.
typo. I thought, no, there's no way they will cut off
Mhm.
that much of their user base. But they did. And I was kind of like, okay, not what I was expecting. Particularly considering, now, if it was a title that was exclusive to Prepared version 4, I could almost get it. I could almost get it because the SDK is different.
Right.
But as it supports Prepared version 2, 3, and 4,
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm sorry, what the?
Yeah, yeah, I'm in the same boat. You may have noticed last week I released a video where I was using the Oculus Rift in a Corsair. The Corsair looked almost exactly like the Milviz one here, but it was actually the old aircraft factory A2A Sims, if you're familiar with them, as I'm sure everyone is. The reason why I did that, I had heard about this Corsair coming up, and initially I thought it was only for version 4 of P3D, but that in and of itself for me was a slap in the face because I am not planning on buying any prepared version ever. I'm sorry. So I get to miss out on this thing because it's
Sorry,
not available on that platform.
I can feel. I feel the comments below. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
But yeah, it's like that's my absolute favorite World War II fighter. So for me, my channel, it has to have a Corsair in there at some point in time. So obviously, I'm going to have to continue using the old A2A one because of the fact that, this one won't be made available, which I think is definitely the wrong move. It's going in the opposite direction of what we just talked about with Just Flight. So I don't know, Milviz. I've always liked your products, but
I'm going to throw this one.
Help me out here.
I'm going to throw this one to you, Sergio, because you've got more of a programming background than Bel or I do. Realistically, what possibly would be a sort of a justification? As I said, we're talking about two development studios that really fundamentally are very similar. They've got very similar, from my understanding at least of both of them, is that you've got very similar staff and very similar sort of like in-house development teams. Why would you have one that would go like they've gone in complete polar opposite directions, and their products are priced reasonably similarly?
Yeah. I think it all comes down to business strategy and whether you want to be on that market, on that specific market or not. I have no idea why would one of the developers go one way and the other developer go the other way. Talking about prepared and explain, we're talking about two completely different beasts in terms of SDK and development. Do one of the guys ready to actually enter the explain market, and they have seen that the explain market is growing and it's finally getting the boost that people were waiting for it to have, and they've decided to bet on it right now and go with it and have two internal development teams, even if you have common people between those teams, and develop for those two sims, and the other one is not ready, or it doesn't think like explaining it's going to have that boost that we are starting to see,
but even the fact that they've actually cut off, as I said, a fairly large portion of their user base. I mean, because a lot of their user base still uses, especially with Milviz making a lot of their products TACPAC compatible. A lot of those users still use FSX. They don't use the prepared version.
Yeah, that was the or that I was going to start. Or they get make any contract, any agreement with Lockheed Martin and just release for prepared, for example, because the FSX, I can understand not releasing for explain when I can understand their point of view. Doesn't mean I would agree with it. I wouldn't. If I had a studio, I'd try to open up to explain as well. But I can understand that they wouldn't want to move to explain for some reason. But FSX not being able or not supporting FSX, for me, it's kind of a mystery. Now the thing is, perhaps they have noticed that the amount of sales they do for in FSX are not worth the investment of having to develop for an older platform, an older technology. Could it be it? Because let's face it, even if prepared, it's similar to FSX. There are some differences in the development, and there are some differences on the workflow on the work pipeline that needs you to be able to do more work for your add-on to work on on these platforms, and then you still need to to provide support for the customers on both platforms. They have the numbers, they have their own numbers on sales, on support, on probably time allotment for per each developer there in terms of both development and support. Hi, Luna. The thing is,
I like Corsairs as well.
yeah. she's voicing her concerns towards the Corsair. They have, like I was saying, they have the numbers. They have their own numbers, and they are the ones that know for which platforms are they selling the most and the amount of money they are spending to be able to cater those platforms. So I would say I trust them to be, smart guys, smart business guys, and they have probably all these charts and numbers and tables and whatnot. And they probably decided, okay, let's just work for P3D because this is something where we can make money easily when compared to being able to support the two platforms. I do not personally believe it. Okay, I'm just throwing reasons out there.
Yeah,
right,
fair enough.
Right.
Yeah, because I have no idea what's going on in their head. I don't believe. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't believe that, but that could be it.
Well, playing devil's advocate here, what is to stop someone like myself from purchasing the version that works with version 2, version 3, or whatever, and messing around with like the aircraft CFGs or whatever I need to get it to work with FSX?
You know what the difference would be? Yeah, if that's possible, you know what the difference would be? I would not put myself out there and say that it works on FSX, and then I would not have to give you support for FSX. You do it at your own risk.
At your own risk,
and
right?
I think
nothing to do with that.
It basically comes down to if you do it, that's fine. But as soon as you tell other people and talk about it publicly, that's when it becomes an issue. So, but I guess I guess that's actually a good place to sort of wrap up this as well, with that fact that again it comes back to that big topic that we had, that very extended topic we had in the last episode, which was it's about discussion, it's about communication. All we got was it's not going to be made available for a platform that they've been making for since it began. So it's kind of like we just got left in the lurch, and it's sort of like, throw us a bone here, guys. Tell us why. Give us something so we're not left wondering what the hell. So I think that's it's another good indication of where that engagement between developers and the community is absolutely vital to be able to preserve goodwill, because at the end of the day, the other thing we're finding more and more developers popping up around the place, and word of mouth and the reliability of your business, of your quality of your product and the quality of your customer service is actually becoming more and more important. So there you go.
Yeah, I actually remember you, Drew, this week. It's Rasbam that's working on the area, right?
Yes.
It's Rasbam guys. Yeah. I remember you telling. I think it was on the last episode where we talked about the community. You telling us that Rasbam was releasing updates weekly with videos and whatnot, and last week they did not.
Right.
I
and that's a direct correlation to what we're talking about.
I think you commented on that post on Facebook where some guy asked, "Where's this week's post?"
It's because they've got nothing for us, so they're not going to bullshit to us again. So
that's
good. This is good.
That's understandable. But that guy, immediately asked what the hell was going on, because suddenly there was no more information, and that's what we want. That's what the community needs. We need. Drew, do me a favor. Woggle your finger, man. We need developers to start talk to us, to the community. Let us know what's going on. If you cannot tell us the whole story, at least tell us, okay, we're all alive, no one's dead.
Oh, it's a teaser, kind of like what Eagle Dynamics did yesterday. They've got this little teaser of what is presumably the updated version of the Caucasus map. Yeah. It's 15 seconds long. All you see is just explosions, and it's like.
But it's something you're talking.
It's
to
enough.
Yep. And it's like Simworks, like Simworks Studios were the same. They sort of like they've been quite. They sort of went, hey guys, we're working on stuff. Don't worry, we're good, but we are busy. you won't see much from
Yeah.
us, but hey, they still drop us a line every now and again. So yeah, I think
We're
that
alive.
community.
Yeah, just release, an HD picture of a rivet in the middle, and I just put this rivet in.
They
Yeah,
did that already. They
yeah,
did
yeah.
that.
See, yeah, we're just putting rivets here, so nothing new, nothing too
Yeah,
But
exciting
he
just
now.
learned
here's
that
here's
when he
here's
started
here's
on
Rivet
Comcast.
2672 for the
Yeah,
Rivet
yeah,
counters out there. All right,
yeah. So,
folks.
but that's what we need. Yeah, we need more
We
communication
just
from
we
you
just need
guys.
that communication. So, all right, folks.
Yeah.
Well, that's been a very interesting discussion on DLC because no matter what people say, because it's funny, the flight sim community seems to think that DLC only came when stuff came to Steam Edition. Sorry, every add-on you've ever purchased or ever got for free or
Hmm.
paid has always been DLC. But that's been our interesting discussion on this topic this week. So thank you very much for joining the three Grumpy Simmers. So thank you to my two Grumpy Simmers. So thank you very much to Sergio from HaleySimmer.com.
Bye, guys.
And thank you very much to Bel Geode from the Bel Geode YouTube channel. And
Ciao.
special guest Luna as well. Thank you to Luna for her commentary tonight as well. Thank you, Luna. Thank you. All right, folks. That's the three Grumpy Simmers wrapped up for this week. My name's been NovaWing24. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget, as always, to check out these wonderful guys' website and YouTube channels. And don't forget to drop us a like and throw a subscribe to everybody as well. That'd be awesome. All right, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Take care. Safe skies to all. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.